My thumb scrolled her Instagram feed with the mechanical precision of a day trader watching futures crash. 43 likes in 20 minutes. The post about authentic connections and breaking free from toxic patterns glowed on my phone screen while Sarah slept beside me, her breathing deep and satisfied. She returned from therapy 2 hours ago, radiant as a lottery winner counting fresh bills. 4 months ago, she'd started seeing Dr. Whitman for anxiety. Standard stuff initially. Breathing exercises scribbled in a leather journal. Mindfulness apps sending hourly reminders. The office visits lasted 50 minutes, always on Wednesdays at 3. Professional. Contained. 2 months in, everything shifted. Sessions migrated from his downtown office to his Victorian house on Maple Street. Tuesdays and Thursdays now, stretching to 2 hours, sometimes 3. More private atmosphere, she'd explained, her eyes avoiding mine while her fingers twisted her wedding ring. Real healing requires intimate space. The word intimate hung between us like smoke from a distant fire. She'd returned from these extended sessions transformed, not simply calmer, luminous. Her skin flushed, movements languid, speaking in phrases I'd never heard cross her lips before. Soul connections, energy alignments, consciousness elevation. The vocabulary of someone else's thoughts colonizing her mouth. Tuesday arrived with spring rain hammering our windows. Over morning coffee, I suggested exploring other therapists, perhaps return to office visits. My voice stayed neutral, careful as a bomb technician working live wires. Sarah's coffee mug slammed against granite. Patriarchal behavior, she spat, each syllable sharp enough to draw blood. Dr. Whitman warned me you'd try controlling my healing journey. The man's name in her mouth made my stomach clench. How many conversations had they shared about me? What stories had she told while lying on his couch? Or was there even a couch anymore? Her phone blazed to life within minutes. A manifesto about male control, emotional manipulation, healing sabotage. The comments section exploded. Friends I barbecued with, couples we vacationed with, all rallying around her newfound awakening. 200 likes. 57 comments. Each notification another nail, sealing dialogue's coffin. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay studying our bedroom ceiling while scrolling through their digital chorus of support. My wife had crowdsourced our marriage's execution, and the mob had spoken. My laptop opened to a search for legal options. State therapy board regulations filled my screen. Ethics codes, professional boundaries, complaint procedures. Home sessions violated 3 separate guidelines. The evidence mounted in neat browser tabs while Sarah murmured in her sleep, probably dreaming of Thursday's appointment. I understood with crystalline clarity. Conversation had died. Only documentation remained. My phone captured screenshots of posts, session times, the slow dissolution of boundaries between patient and healer. Tomorrow I call a lawyer. Tonight, I pretend to sleep beside a stranger wearing my wife's face, planning an exit strategy she'd never see coming. Wednesday morning arrived with false sunshine. I called in sick, my voice hoarse with manufactured exhaustion, while Sarah dressed for work in the bathroom. Her humming echoed off marble tiles. Some melody I didn't recognize, probably something Whitman had played during their sessions. The law office of Richard Sawyer squatted beside the highway, like a concrete toad, practical and unadorned. No mahogany panels or leather-bound volumes here. Just fluorescent lights and coffee-stained carpets where real people came to dissolve their lives. 7 days I'd waited for this appointment. 7 nights of documenting everything. Screenshots filled a folder on my phone. Her posts about liberation, spiritual awakening, the toxic masculinity supposedly suffocating her growth. The calendar showed her session patterns. The steady migration from professional boundaries to whatever existed now. Tuesdays and Thursdays had become sacred. 3 hours minimum. His house. Always his house. Sawyer reviewed my evidence with the detached efficiency of a surgeon examining x-rays. His fingers traced the timeline I constructed, pausing at the shift from office to home visits. Clear ethical violation, he muttered, making notes on a yellow pad. The board will want to see this. He recommended mediation first. Cheaper, faster, less brutal. but his assistant photocopied divorce papers anyway, sliding them into a manila envelope I hope never to open, just in case she refuses to negotiate. Sawyer explained, his eyes holding mine with practiced sympathy. 2 weeks dissolved into preparation. A personal checking account opened at a bank across town. Small transfers from my paycheck accumulating like armor. Every shared asset cataloged, photographed, documented. The house deed, investment statements, retirement accounts. Our entire financial skeleton laid bare in duplicate folders. The apartment I found perched above a coffee shop downtown. Month-to-month lease, furnished, anonymous. The landlord barely glanced at my application, interested only in first month's rent and security deposit paid in cash. A boat hole, an escape hatch, a life raft disguised as 900 square feet of beige carpet and white walls. My phone became a weapon. State law permitted single-party recording, and Thursday night provided perfect ammunition. Sarah floated to our front door at 8:17, pupils wide, speaking in streams about chakras and energy fields and breakthrough moments. I asked careful questions while my phone captured every word from my pocket. Her voice pitched higher, describing Whitman's techniques, his special understanding, the connection she'd never experienced with anyone else. Not even with me? The question escaped before I could stop it. Silence stretched between us like a tightening wire. She studied my face, perhaps seeing something new there. You wouldn't understand, she finally answered. Dr. Whitman says people like you aren't ready for this level of consciousness. People like me, in our own kitchen. I become a category, a type, an obstacle to her evolution. The next morning, she left for her regular job at the museum, kissing my cheek with lips that felt like a stranger's. I smiled, waved, played the role of supporter husband while mentally reviewing my checklist. Bank account established, apartment secured, evidence compiled, lawyer retained. 3 weeks of silent preparation had transformed me into something I'd never imagined, a man orchestrating his own disappearance. Each action deliberate, calculated, necessary. The fury that initially burned my chest had cooled into something more useful. Not rage, not desperation, just the mechanical precision of someone dismantling a life piece by careful piece. Thursday arrived again. She practically glowed at breakfast, anticipating her afternoon session. I kissed her goodbye, tasting nothing, feeling nothing except the weight of next week's plan pressing against my ribs like a loaded gun. The first of the month arrived with unseasonable cold. Sarah left for work at 8:30, her goodbye kiss landing somewhere near my ear. I waited until her car turned the corner, counted to 100, then began loading boxes into my truck. The letter I left centered on our kitchen table, weighted down with her favorite coffee mug. 3 paragraphs. Temporary separation. Need for space. Contact through attorneys only. Each word chosen for legal precision rather than emotional truth. The apartment above the coffee shop smelled like espresso and new beginnings. Box after box climbed the narrow stairs, closed documents, the few personal items that belonged to me alone. By noon, my old life had been surgically extracted from our house like a tumor from healthy tissue. 30 days. State law required 30 days of separation before filing. I marked them on a calendar thumbtacked to my blank wall. Each X a small victory against inertia. Sarah's first call came at 6:14 that evening. Then 6:20. 6:27. My phone lit up like a slot machine, her name flashing with increasing desperation. Text messages flooded in, confusion, anger, pleading, rage, cycling through emotions like a broken washing machine. I screenshot everything, forwarded them to Sawyer, and turned off my phone. Day 31, I filed for divorce. The papers serve her at work, a deliberate choice to ensure witnesses and avoid confrontation. Her museum colleagues would whisper for weeks about the process server asking for Sarah by name, the envelope that made her face drain white as gallery walls. My complaint to the licensing board went out the same day. Evidence attached in neat appendices. The documented home visits, the session schedule, the recordings where she described their connection. 3 ethical violations clearly outlined, each one sufficient for investigation. Her lawyer contacted Sawyer within 72 hours. Mediation scheduled, canceled, rescheduled. She wanted the house, spousal support, half my retirement despite choosing not to work for 2 years while she found herself. The mediator, a retired judge with tobacco-stained fingers, reviewed our assets with visible exhaustion. "You both seem like reasonable people," he said, which proved he understood neither of us. Mediation collapsed in 4 hours. Sarah slammed doors, accused me of patriarchal abuse, claimed Whitman had warned her I'd try to destroy her growth. The mediator scheduled court proceedings for 4 months out, his face suggesting he'd seen this movie before. Meanwhile, the licensing board moved with bureaucratic efficiency. Whitman received notice of investigation, immediately suspending home sessions. Sarah's Tuesday through Thursday routine shattered overnight. She called Sawyer's office sobbing about lost progress, interrupted healing, the cruelty of my timing. His secretary took detailed notes, adding them to our file. The house went on the market in week 6. Sarah fought it initially, then realized she couldn't afford the mortgage alone. Her recent return to work, a part-time position at a marketing firm, barely covered her apartment rental. The museum job had evaporated during her 2-year sabbatical of self-discovery. I drove past our old house once, seeing the realtor's sign staked in the lawn we'd planted together 3 springs ago. A young couple stood on the porch, the woman's hand resting on her pregnant belly, while the realtor gestured at the front door, life cycling forward, indifferent to our small tragedy. 8 weeks into separation, I received an email from the licensing board. Whitman faced 2 additional complaints from former patients, a pattern emerging from the fog of individual experiences. The investigation had expanded, a professional reputation unraveling thread by careful thread. Sarah would learn about it eventually, probably from the professional gossip network she'd once been part of. For now, she lived in ignorance, still believing in breakthrough moments and special connections, not yet understanding she'd been neither first nor last. 3 months crawled by before the licensing board convened. I sat in the back row of a beige conference room, watching Whitman sweat through his testimony. 2 other women had joined my complaint, one via video link, her face pixelated but voice crystal clear as she described sessions that migrated from his office to his home, then to weekend retreats at his cabin. The board members, 5 professionals with faces carved from years of hearing excuses, took notes without expression. Whitman's attorney, a nervous man who kept adjusting his tie, argued about innovative therapeutic approaches and consensual boundary adjustments. The phrases sounded rehearsed, desperate, hollow as old bones. 6 months probation, immediate cessation of home visits, mandatory supervision for all future sessions. Whitman nodded at the verdict like a man accepting a terminal diagnosis. His therapeutic revolution reduced to supervised hours in a sterile office. Sarah learned about the ruling from a former colleague's Facebook post. She called me directly for the first time since separation, her voice small and confused. "Did you know?" she asked. "When you filed a complaint. Did you know about the others?" "No," I answered truthfully. "I only knew about us." The silence stretched across cellular waves before she hung up. There was nothing left to say. Our divorce hearing arrived on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday, except this one would divide our life into before and after. The courthouse smelled of floor wax and broken promises. Sarah wore a dress I'd never seen, probably bought for the occasion. We sat at separate tables like strangers who happened to share a decade of history. The judge, a woman with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, reviewed our asset division with mechanical precision. The house had sold for $300,000. After mortgage payoff and fees, $150,000 each. Clean, mathematical, fair. Sarah's request for alimony died quickly. 2 years of voluntary unemployment while pursuing personal growth didn't merit support, especially with her new marketing position. She gripped the table edge as the judge explained this, knuckles white as fresh paint. "The divorce is granted," the judge announced, her gavel creating a period at the end of our sentence. We walked out separately, careful not to share an elevator. Through the courthouse windows, I watched her cross the parking lot, shoulders bent against wind that wasn't blowing. 6 months from that first morning, I'd moved out. Half a year measured in legal documents and licensing hearings. The apartment above the coffee shop had accumulated furniture, books, signs of a life rebuilding itself from scratch. Work became my anchor. The promotion I'd chased for 2 years finally materialized, partly because I had nothing else to fill my evenings except spreadsheets and proposals. My new office had a window overlooking the city, a view I'd once imagined describing to Sarah over dinner. 8 months in, news reached me through Sawyer's paralegal. Another complaint against Whitman, this one involving a 19-year-old patient. The details were sealed, but the board had scheduled an emergency hearing. His 6-month probation had become a noose tightening with each revelation. Sarah's social media went dark around the same time. The posts about authentic connections and spiritual awakening vanished overnight. Friends reported she'd moved to another city, taking a senior marketing position that required travel, running from the geography of her choices. The paralegal also mentioned Whitman had voluntarily surrendered his license rather than face revocation. "Happens more than you'd think," she said, sorting papers with practiced indifference. They give it up voluntarily, move states, reinvent themselves as life coaches or consultants. No law against that. The information settled in my stomach, like cold stones. Somewhere Whitman was probably setting up shop again, finding new patients to heal in private spaces, continuing his special connections under a different title. The smaller house faced east, catching morning light through windows I'd chosen myself. $170,000 bought more than I'd expected. 3 bedrooms, a workshop in the garage, a garden that needed attention. My hands learned new rhythms. Laying tile, fixing faucets, coaxing tomatoes from soil that had been neglected for years. 8 months post-divorce, normalcy crept in like tide returning. Work held its usual challenges, but the promotion had shifted my focus from surviving to building. The team I managed responded well to someone who showed up present, undistracted by domestic warfare. Jennifer worked 3 floors up in procurement. We'd shared elevators for 5 years without really seeing each other. After divorce, people come into focus differently. She laughed at my disaster story about attempting to install a ceiling fan alone, offered to help with her contractor brother's expertise. One ceiling fan became dinner. Dinner became Saturday markets. Markets became something neither of us rushed to name. A Tuesday in March brought unexpected mail. Sarah's handwriting on cream envelope paper, postmarked from Denver. My fingers hesitated before opening it, remembering other letters, other Tuesdays. 3 pages of careful script. She'd been in therapy. Real therapy this time, with a woman who kept rigid boundaries and never offered special connections. The work was harder, without magical breakthroughs or soul-bonding sessions. Just a grinding effort of examining her own patterns, her tendency to seek external salvation, her addiction to being seen as special by authority figures. She found my licensing board complaint online while researching her new therapist. Reading my testimony alongside those other women had broken something open. Not anger anymore, but recognition. Whitman had run the same playbook with each of them. The graduated intimacy, the special understanding, the careful erosion of professional boundaries disguised as healing innovation. "I understand if you don't respond," she wrote. "I'm not seeking forgiveness or reconciliation, but you deserve to know that I see it now. All of it." My response took 3 drafts. Brief, cordial, wishing her well on her journey. No doors open or closed, just acknowledgement between 2 people who'd shared a life before it fractured. Jennifer read the exchange without judgment, her hand steady on my shoulder. That evening, over Thai food we'd learned was each other's favorite, I told her complete story. Not the abbreviated version I'd share with others, but everything. The Instagram scrolling, the sleepless documentation, the mechanical precision of orchestrating my exit. "You gave yourself time to do it right," she observed, spinning pad thai on her fork. Most people would have exploded immediately. She was right. The slow, methodical approach had saved me from decisions made in rage. Every step calculated, documented, legally sound. No screaming confrontations or dramatic revelations. Just a steady accumulation of evidence and careful execution of an exit strategy. Spring arrived with news through professional channels. Whitman had established a holistic life coaching practice in Arizona. No license required for coaching. No board oversight. The website promised transformation through intimate accountability partnerships and breakthrough boundary work. The same predatory pattern in fresh packaging, beyond reach of regulatory bodies. My lawyer had warned me this would happen. They always resurface, Sawyer had said, sliding my final invoice across his desk. Different state, different title, same behavior. The information sat with me for days before I forwarded it to the Arizona board, though I knew they had no jurisdiction over coaching. Sometimes you document things simply because documentation matters, even when justice remains partial. 1 year from that morning, I'd first scrolled through Sarah's feed like a desperate broker. The house I'd built, the relationship I'd nurtured, the career I'd focused on, all of it constructed on the rubble of what had collapsed. Not revenge or vindication, but something more useful, a life deliberately rebuilt one careful choice at a time.